Imagine living in a neighborhood where, for years, you hear whispers through the walls, soft voices, footsteps, and laughter that never seem to match the faces you know. In 1946, a quiet American town was shaken when a renovation revealed a hidden world, a second family living in secret, tucked away behind the walls of an ordinary house. How did they survive unseen for so long? Why did no one notice? Tonight we open the door to one of the strangest and most chilling mysteries ever uncovered. Stay with me, because the truth behind the hidden house will make you question what you think you know about your own home. Willow Lane was the kind of street where everyone knew each other's names. The houses were close together, their porches lined with flower pots and rocking chairs. Children played in the yards and neighbors shared recipes over the fences, and the world felt safe and predictable. But at the very end of the lane stood a house that was different, a house that for years held a secret no one could have imagined. The Johnson family moved into the old house in the summer of 1941. It was a two-story home with peeling paint, creaky floors, and a garden overgrown with wild roses. To Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, it was a place to start over after the war, a place to raise their children and build new memories. To their children, Tommy and Grace, it was a world of adventure, full of hidden corners, dusty attics, and the promise of stories waiting to be discovered. From the very first night, the house felt alive. The wind rattled the windows, the floorboards groaned, and the walls seemed to whisper in the dark. At first, the Johnsons laughed it off. "Old houses have their quirks," Mr. Johnson would say, tucking the children into bed. "It's just the house settling." But as the weeks passed, the noises grew stranger. Sometimes, late at night, Mrs. Johnson would wake to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She would get up, check on the children, and find them fast asleep. Other times, Tommy would hear a soft voice calling his name from behind the wall, or Grace would find her favorite doll move from one room to another. The neighbors noticed things, too. Mrs. Miller, who lived next door, swore she heard laughter coming from the Johnsons' house long after the lights had gone out. Mr. Harris, the mailman, once saw a shadow move behind an upstairs window when the family was away. The children on the street dared each other to run up to the porch and knock, convinced the house was haunted. Despite the whispers, the Johnsons tried to make the house their own. They painted the walls, planted new flowers, and filled the rooms with music and laughter. But the strange events continued. Food would go missing from the pantry. Toys would disappear, only to reappear days later in odd places. Sometimes the family would find muddy footprints in the hallway, even when no one had been outside. One evening, as the family sat down to dinner, they heard a soft tapping sound coming from the dining room wall. Mr. Johnson got up, pressed his ear to the plaster, and listened. The tapping stopped. He shrugged, sat back down, and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in his chest. But the children were not so easily convinced. Tommy, always the braver of the two, decided to investigate. He spent hours crawling through the attic, tapping on walls and peeking into every nook and cranny. Grace followed him, clutching her doll and whispering that they should leave the ghosts alone. One afternoon, Tommy found a loose floorboard in his bedroom. He pried it up and found a small, dusty space beneath. Inside was a single marble, a faded photograph, and a scrap of paper with a name written in careful script: Lydia. Tommy showed his discovery to his parents, who smiled and said it must have belonged to a child who lived in the house long ago. But that night, Tommy dreamed of a girl with dark hair and sad eyes, whispering his name from behind the wall. The dreams became more frequent. Grace began to have them too. She would wake in the middle of the night, crying that someone was watching her from the closet. Mrs. Johnson tried to comfort her, but she could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The family grew more anxious. Mr. Johnson started locking the doors at night, checking every window before bed. Mrs. Johnson kept a lamp burning in the hallway, hoping the light would chase away the shadows. But the whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent. One stormy night, as the wind howled outside and the rain battered the windows, the family huddled together in the living room. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the house was plunged into darkness. In that silence, they all heard it. A soft, desperate whisper coming from the walls. "Help us." The lights snapped back on, and the family stared at each other in shock. No one spoke, no one moved. The only sound was the pounding of their hearts. The next morning, Mr. Johnson called a handyman to check the wiring, convinced the noises were just the house settling. The handyman spent hours tapping on walls, crawling through the crawl space, and checking every pipe and wire. He found nothing unusual, but as he was leaving, he paused at the front door. "You know," he said, "old houses like this sometimes have secrets. You never know what you'll find if you look hard enough." The words lingered in Mrs. Johnson's mind. She began to pay closer attention to the house. The way the walls seemed thicker in some places, the way the floor sloped in the hallway, the way the air felt colder near certain doors. She started to wonder if the house was hiding something. The children grew more restless. Tommy became obsessed with finding the source of the whispers. He drew maps of the house, marking every creak and groan, every place where the walls sounded hollow. Grace followed him, her fear growing with each new discovery. One afternoon, as the children played in the backyard, they heard a soft voice calling from the garden wall. They pressed their ears to the bricks and listened. The voice was faint but clear, a child's voice singing a lullaby they had never heard before. They ran inside, breathless and pale, and told their mother what they had heard. Mrs. Johnson tried to reassure them, but she could not explain the fear that gripped her heart. As the days passed, the family grew more isolated. The neighbors' whispers grew louder, and the children at school began to tease Tommy and Grace, calling them ghost kids. The Johnsons stopped inviting friends over, stopped hosting dinners, and stopped trying to pretend that everything was normal. The house on Willow Lane became a place of secrets, a place where the walls seemed to watch, where the air was thick with unspoken fears, and where the past refused to stay buried. As the chapter closes, the Johnsons stand at the edge of a mystery that will change their lives forever. The whispers in the walls grow louder, the shadows grow deeper, and the truth waits, hidden just out of sight. Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the heart of the hidden house and the secrets that have been waiting to be discovered for years. Whispers and shadows. The days after that stormy night seemed to stretch on forever for the Johnson family. The house on Willow Lane, once a place of hope and new beginnings, now felt like a puzzle they couldn't solve. The whispers in the walls were no longer just a curiosity. They were a constant presence, a shadow that followed them from room to room. Mrs. Johnson tried to keep life as normal as possible. She baked bread, tended the garden, and made sure Tommy and Grace did their homework. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Every time she passed the hallway, she felt a chill. Every time she heard a creak or a sigh from the walls, her heart skipped a beat. Mr. Johnson became more withdrawn. He spent his evenings in the garage, tinkering with old radios and tools, trying to drown out the sounds from inside the house. He told himself it was just the wind or the pipes or the house settling. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Tommy and Grace grew more restless. The other children at school had started to avoid them, whispering behind their backs and calling them names. "Ghost kids," they said. "Haunted house." Tommy tried to ignore them, but Grace came home in tears more than once. One afternoon, Tommy decided he'd had enough. He grabbed a flashlight and a screwdriver and told Grace to follow him. "We're going to find out what's in the walls," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. They started in the attic, crawling through the dust and cobwebs, shining the flashlight into every corner. They tapped on the walls, listening for hollow spots. In one corner, they found a small door, barely big enough for a child to squeeze through. Tommy tried the handle, but it was stuck fast. "Maybe it's just a crawl space," Grace whispered, her eyes wide. "Or maybe it's where the whispers are coming from," Tommy replied. They spent hours searching, but found nothing except old boxes, broken toys, and the occasional mouse. Still, the feeling of being watched never left them. Meanwhile, the neighbors' curiosity was turning to concern. Mrs. Miller, who lived next door, started watching the Johnson house from her kitchen window. She noticed the children spending more time outside, their faces pale and drawn. She saw Mrs. Johnson standing on the porch late at night, staring into the darkness. She heard the whispers, too, soft voices drifting through the walls, just on the edge of hearing. One evening, Mrs. Miller invited Mrs. Johnson over for tea. They sat in the kitchen, the air thick with unspoken worries. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Miller asked gently. Mrs. Johnson hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know. The house, it feels different, like it's hiding something from us." Mrs. Miller nodded. "I've heard things, too. Whispers, footsteps. I thought I was imagining it." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their fears pressing down on them. "Do you think someone could be living in the house?" Mrs. Johnson finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Miller looked startled and thoughtful. "I don't know, but I think you should talk to Mr. Johnson. Maybe it's time to look a little closer." That night, Mrs. Johnson told her husband about the conversation. At first, he laughed it off, but the look in her eyes made him pause. "Maybe we should check the house again," he said, "just to be sure." The next day, Mr. Johnson took a hammer and started tapping on the walls, listening for hollow spots. He checked the basement, the attic, and every closet. He found nothing unusual, but the feeling of unease only grew stronger. The whispers continued. Sometimes they were soft, like a lullaby. Other times they were urgent, like a warning. The family started to notice other strange things. Doors that wouldn't stay closed. Windows that rattled even when there was no wind. And cold spots that lingered in the corners of every room. One night, Grace woke to find her doll missing from her bed. She searched the room, but it was nowhere to be found. The next morning, she found it sitting on the windowsill, its eyes staring out at the garden. Tommy started keeping a notebook, writing down every strange thing that happened. He drew maps of the house, marking the places where the whispers were loudest. He wrote down the times he heard footsteps, the places where things went missing, and the dreams he and Grace shared. The dreams were the strangest part. Both children started dreaming of a girl with dark hair and sad eyes, whispering their names from behind the walls. In the dreams, she would reach out to them, her hand pressing against the plaster, her voice pleading for help. The dreams left them feeling tired and anxious. Grace started sleeping with the light on, clutching her doll to her chest. Tommy became more determined than ever to find the truth. The town's curiosity grew. People started talking about the Johnson house at the grocery store, at church, and at the school. Some said it was haunted. Others said it was cursed. A few wondered if someone was hiding in the house, but no one dared to investigate. One day, a group of boys from school dared Tommy to spend the night in the attic. "If you're not scared, prove it," they taunted. Tommy accepted the challenge. That night, he climbed into the attic with his flashlight and notebook, determined to find the source of the whispers. He sat in the darkness, listening to the house creak and groan. Hours passed, and just as he was about to give up, he heard it, a soft voice calling his name. He followed the sound to the far corner of the attic, where the small door was. This time, the handle turned easily. Tommy crawled through the opening, his heart pounding. On the other side, he found a narrow passage, barely wide enough to crawl through. The air was cold and musty, and the walls were covered in strange marks, scratches, drawings, and words written in a child's hand. He followed the passage until it ended at another small door. He pushed it open and found himself in a tiny room hidden between the walls. The room was empty, but there were signs that someone had lived there. An old blanket, a broken toy, and a faded photograph of a family he didn't recognize. Tommy's discovery changed everything. He ran to tell his parents, who called the police. The house was searched from top to bottom, and more hidden rooms were found, tiny spaces filled with the remains of meals, clothes, and toys. The news spread quickly. The town was shocked and the neighbors horrified. The Johnsons were overwhelmed by the attention, but also relieved to finally have an explanation for the whispers and shadows that had haunted them for so long. As the chapter closes, the Johnsons stand at the threshold of a new mystery. Who had lived in the walls? Why had they hidden for so long? And what secrets were still waiting to be discovered? Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the heart of the hidden house and the family that lived in the shadows. The Secret Within. The Johnsons' discovery of the hidden room sent shockwaves through their family and the entire neighborhood. For days, the house on Willow Lane was the talk of the town. People gathered on the sidewalk, whispering and pointing, their faces a mix of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. The Johnsons, once just another family on the block, now found themselves at the center of a mystery that no one could ignore. The police arrived early the next morning, their cars lining the street and their voices echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Officers moved through the house with flashlights and notepads, examining every corner, every closet, every inch of wall. The Johnsons watched anxiously from the living room, their hearts pounding with a mix of dread and relief. Tommy and Grace sat on the couch, clutching each other's hands. They felt a strange sense of pride for having found the secret room, but also a deep fear of what else might be hidden in their home. Mrs. Johnson tried to comfort them, but her own nerves were frayed. Mr. Johnson paced the floor, his jaw clenched, his mind racing with questions. The officers started in the attic, where Tommy had found the small door. They measured the space, took photographs, and carefully documented every item they found. The old blanket, the broken toy, the faded photograph, all were bagged as evidence. The officers then moved to the rest of the house, tapping on walls, listening for hollow spots, and searching for any sign of more hidden rooms. It didn't take long for them to find another one. Behind a bookshelf in the upstairs hallway, they discovered a narrow passage that led to a second hidden room. This one was larger, with a makeshift bed, a small table, and a stack of old newspapers. The air was thick with dust, and the floor was littered with crumbs and scraps of paper. On the table sat a candle, burned down to a stub, and a notebook filled with careful handwriting. The officers called the Johnsons upstairs to see. Mrs. Johnson gasped when she saw the room, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Johnson stared in disbelief, shaking his head. Tommy and Grace peered inside, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Someone lived here," Mrs. Johnson whispered. The officers nodded. "It looks like they were here for a long time." The discovery of the second room only deepened the mystery. Who had built these hidden spaces? How had they survived for so long without being discovered? And where were they now? The police continued their search, moving through the house with growing urgency. In the basement, they found a third hidden room, this one even smaller than the others. It was little more than a crawl space, but inside were more signs of life: a child's shoe, a tin cup, and a small, tattered blanket. The Johnsons were overwhelmed. Their home, once a place of comfort and safety, now felt like a maze of secrets. They struggled to make sense of what they had found, their minds racing with questions and fears. The news spread quickly. Reporters arrived from the city, their cameras flashing and their questions relentless. The Johnsons tried to avoid the attention, but it was impossible. Their house was now a spectacle, a place where the line between reality and nightmare had blurred. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, sharing stories and theories. Some remembered hearing strange noises over the years, footsteps in the night, whispers through the walls, the sound of someone moving just out of sight. Others recalled missing food, toys, and other small items, but had always blamed it on forgetfulness or the neighborhood children. Mrs. Miller, who lived next door, told the reporters about the night she had heard laughter coming from the Johnsons' house long after the lights had gone out. "I thought it was just the children playing," she said, her voice trembling. "But now I wonder—" The police continued their investigation, searching for any clue that might reveal the identity of the hidden family. They examined the notebooks and photographs, looking for names, dates, or any other information. They interviewed the Johnsons, the neighbors, and anyone who might have seen or heard something unusual. But the clues were few and far between. The notebooks were filled with careful handwriting, but most of the entries were mundane: lists of food, notes about the weather, and observations about the Johnsons' daily routines. The photographs showed a family, a mother, a father, and 2 children, smiling in front of a house that looked nothing like the one on Willow Lane. The police brought in experts to analyze the handwriting and the photographs. They searched missing persons records, hoping to find a match. But the trail was cold. The hidden family had left no trace of their identity, no clue as to where they had come from or where they had gone. The Johnsons struggled to process what had happened. Mrs. Johnson felt a deep sense of guilt, wondering how she could have lived in the same house as another family without ever knowing. Mr. Johnson was angry at the intruders, angry at himself, angry at the world for turning his home into a mystery he couldn't solve. Tommy and Grace were haunted by the discovery. They dreamed of the hidden rooms, of the voices in the walls, of the girl with dark hair and sad eyes. They wondered if she was still out there, watching them from the shadows. The town was divided. Some people saw the hidden family as victims, forced into hiding by circumstances beyond their control. Others saw them as intruders, stealing food and privacy from the Johnsons. A few believed the house was cursed, haunted by the ghosts of those who had lived and died in its shadows. The Johnsons tried to move on, but the whispers never stopped. They moved to a new house, hoping for a fresh start, but the past followed them. The children grew up with a sense of unease, always wondering if someone was watching. The hidden house became a symbol, a reminder that secrets can hide in plain sight, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes trap us instead. As the chapter closes, the Johnsons stand at the threshold of a new mystery. Who was the secret family? Why did they hide? What happened to them after the walls were torn down? And what secrets were still waiting to be discovered? Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the heart of the hidden house and the family that lived in the shadows. The family in the walls. The days following the discovery of the hidden rooms were a blur of police tape, camera flashes, and hushed conversations. The Johnsons' home, once a private sanctuary, had become a public spectacle. Reporters from the city crowded the sidewalk, their questions sharp and relentless. Neighbors who had once waved from their porches now stood in clusters, whispering and pointing, their faces a mix of fear, fascination, and disbelief. Inside the house, the police worked methodically, cataloging every item found in the secret rooms. The evidence table in the living room grew crowded. A child's worn shoe, a cracked teacup, a faded photograph of a family no one recognized, and most haunting of all, a small leather-bound diary. The diary was discovered in the largest of the hidden rooms, tucked beneath a thin mattress. Its cover was soft with age, the pages yellowed and fragile. The handwriting inside was careful and neat, the words written in a child's hand. The first entry was dated 1942. "We are safe for now. Mama says we must be quiet. I miss the sun." The police read the diary aloud to the Johnsons, their voices soft and respectful. Each entry painted a picture of life lived in the shadows, a life of fear, hope, and longing. The child wrote about the family's routines, how they moved only at night, how they listened to the Johnsons' laughter through the walls, how they celebrated birthdays with whispered songs and shared crumbs of cake. "Tommy got a new bike today. I wish I could ride it. Mama says maybe someday." The diary was filled with small moments of joy and heartbreak. The child wrote about watching the Johnson children play in the yard, about longing to join them, about the games she and her brother invented in the darkness. She wrote about the fear of being discovered, the terror of every creak and footstep, the relief when the house was quiet again. "Sometimes I dream of running outside. I dream of sunlight and grass. But Mama says we must stay hidden. She says it's safer this way." The Johnsons listened in silence, their hearts heavy with guilt and sorrow. Mrs. Johnson wept openly, her tears falling onto the diary's fragile pages. Mr. Johnson sat with his head in his hands, unable to look at his children. Tommy and Grace clung to each other, their eyes wide with shock and empathy. The police continued their investigation, searching for any clue that might reveal the identity of the hidden family. They sent the diary to experts, hoping to match the handwriting or the names mentioned inside to missing persons reports. They analyzed the photographs, the letters, and every scrap of evidence, but the trail remained cold. The story spread quickly, picked up by newspapers and radio stations across the country. The Johnsons' house became a symbol of mystery and fear, a place where the line between safety and danger had been blurred beyond recognition. One viral video, the most disturbing secret rooms ever discovered, featured the hidden house, blending dramatic reenactments with real footage of the discovery. The video drew millions of views, sparking debates and theories in living rooms and classrooms nationwide. Some viewers saw the secret family as victims, forced into hiding by a world that had failed them. Others saw them as intruders, their presence a violation of the Johnsons' privacy and trust. The town was divided. Some neighbors brought food and flowers to the Johnsons, offering comfort and support. Others avoided the house altogether, afraid of what else might be lurking behind the walls. The children at school whispered about ghosts and monsters, their imaginations fueled by the stories they heard at home. The Johnsons struggled to adjust to their new reality. Mrs. Johnson found herself jumping at every sound, her nerves frayed by the constant attention. Mr. Johnson became withdrawn, spending long hours at work, and avoiding the house whenever possible. Tommy and Grace were haunted by nightmares, their dreams filled with shadows and whispers. The diary became a lifeline for the family, a way to understand the people who had shared their home for so many years. They read it together at night, their voices trembling as they recited the child's words. They tried to imagine what it must have been like to live in fear, to watch the world from behind a wall, to long for freedom and sunlight. "Mama says we must be brave. She says we are a family, even if no one can see us. I hope she is right." The diary's final entry was dated just a few days before the discovery. "I heard Tommy and Grace laughing today. I wish I could laugh with them. Maybe someday someone will find us. Maybe someday we will be free." The words lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the family's hope and despair. The police eventually closed the case, unable to find any trace of the hidden family. The Johnsons were left with more questions than answers. Who were the people who had lived in their walls? Why had they hidden for so long, and where had they gone? The house on Willow Lane became a place of legend, a warning, and a riddle. People came from miles around to see the hidden rooms, to walk through the spaces where the secret family had lived, to imagine what it must have been like to survive in the shadows. The Johnsons tried to move on, but the past followed them. The whispers in the walls were gone, but the memories remained. The children grew up with a sense of unease, always wondering if someone was watching. As the chapter closes, the Johnsons stand at the threshold of a new mystery. The diary's words echo in their minds, a reminder that secrets can hide in the most ordinary places, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes become our prisons. Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the search for truth, the investigation, the theories, and the lingering questions that refuse to be silenced. The search for truth. The days after the discovery of the secret family's diary were filled with a restless energy that swept through Willow Lane and beyond. The Johnsons' home, once a place of laughter and routine, had become a crossroads for police, journalists, and townsfolk desperate for answers. The air was thick with questions, and every conversation seemed to circle back to the same haunting mystery. Who were the people who had lived in the walls? The police investigation intensified. Detectives from the city arrived, bringing with them a sense of urgency and a promise to leave no stone unturned. They set up a small command post in the Johnsons' living room, their radios crackling and their notepads filling with observations. The Johnsons, exhausted and overwhelmed, tried to cooperate as best they could, but the constant presence of strangers in their home only deepened their sense of unease. Mrs. Johnson found herself replaying every moment of the past years, searching for signs she might have missed. She remembered the missing food, the toys that vanished and reappeared, the cold spots in the hallway. She wondered how she could have been so blind, how she could have shared her home with another family and never known. Mr. Johnson was plagued by guilt and anger. He blamed himself for not protecting his family, for not listening to the whispers, for dismissing the children's fears. He spent long hours in the garage, avoiding the house and the memories that now haunted every room. Tommy and Grace struggled to make sense of what had happened. They felt a strange mix of fear, curiosity, and empathy for the secret family. They wondered what it must have been like to live in the shadows, to watch the world from behind a wall, to long for freedom and sunlight. They read the diary over and over, searching for clues, for comfort, for a way to understand. The police pored over the diary, the photographs, and every scrap of evidence found in the hidden rooms. They sent the diary to handwriting experts, hoping to match the writing to missing persons reports. They analyzed the photographs, searching for familiar faces, landmarks, or anything that might reveal the family's identity. But the clues were few and far between. The diary was filled with small details, descriptions of meals, games, and the Johnsons' daily routines, but nothing that pointed to a specific name or place. The photographs showed a family, a mother, a father, and 2 children, smiling in front of a house that no one recognized. The letters found in the hidden rooms were written in a language no one in town could read. The detectives interviewed the Johnsons, the neighbors, and anyone who might have seen or heard something unusual. They asked about strangers in the neighborhood, about missing persons, about families who had disappeared during the war. They followed every lead, no matter how small, but the trail always seemed to go cold. The town was gripped by a sense of collective guilt. Neighbors who had once prided themselves on knowing everyone's business now wondered what else they might have missed. Mrs. Miller, who had lived next door for years, confessed to the police that she had heard whispers through the walls, but had always assumed it was just the wind. Mr. Harris, the mailman, remembered seeing shadows in the windows, but had never thought to investigate. The Johnsons' children became the focus of attention at school. Some classmates treated them with awe, as if they were heroes for discovering the secret rooms. Others avoided them, whispering about ghosts and curses. Tommy and Grace felt isolated. Their world turned upside down by a mystery they could not escape. The media frenzy only added to the pressure. Reporters camped outside the house, their cameras flashing and their questions relentless. The Johnsons tried to shield their children from the attention, but it was impossible. Their home was now a symbol of fear and fascination, a place where the line between safety and danger had been blurred beyond recognition. The diary became a lifeline for the family, a way to connect with the people who had shared their home for so many years. They read it together at night, their voices trembling as they recited the child's words. They tried to imagine what it must have been like to live in fear, to watch the world from behind a wall, to long for freedom and sunlight. Mama says we must be brave. She says we are a family, even if no one can see us. I hope she is right. The diary's final entry was especially haunting. I heard Tommy and Grace laughing today. I wish I could laugh with them. Maybe someday someone will find us. Maybe someday we will be free. The words lingered in the air, a reminder of the family's hope and despair. The police eventually closed the case, unable to find any trace of the hidden family. The Johnsons were left with more questions than answers. Who were the people who had lived in their walls? Why had they hidden for so long? And where had they gone? The house on Willow Lane became a place of legend, a warning, and a riddle. People came from miles around to see the hidden rooms, to walk through the spaces where the secret family had lived, to imagine what it must have been like to survive in the shadows. The Johnsons tried to move on, but the past followed them. The whispers in the walls were gone, but the memories remained. The children grew up with a sense of unease, always wondering if someone was watching. The hidden house became a symbol, a reminder that secrets can hide in plain sight, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes trap us instead. As the chapter closes, the Johnsons stand at the threshold of a new mystery. The diary's words echo in their minds, a reminder that secrets can hide in the most ordinary places, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes become our prisons. Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the town's reckoning, the guilt, the fear, and the fascination that kept the legend of the hidden house alive for generations, the town's reckoning. The weeks after the police closed their investigation were some of the strangest in Willow Lane's history. The town, once so sure of itself, now felt exposed, its sense of safety and community shaken by the revelation that a family had lived in the shadows for years, unseen and unheard. The Johnsons' house, with its secret rooms and haunting diary, became a symbol of everything the town didn't want to admit, that even in the closest-knit neighborhoods, secrets could grow like roots beneath the surface. The Johnsons tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt the same. Mrs. Johnson found herself jumping at every creak and sigh of the old house. She would pause in the hallway, listening for whispers that were no longer there, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and regret. She wondered if she had failed as a mother, as a neighbor, as a member of the community. She replayed every moment, every missed sign, every time she had dismissed her children's fears. Mr. Johnson, once the steady anchor of the family, became more withdrawn. He spent long hours at work, avoiding the house and the memories that haunted every room. When he was home, he was quiet, his eyes shadowed by guilt and anger. He blamed himself for not protecting his family, for not listening to the whispers, for not seeing what was right in front of him. Tommy and Grace struggled to find their place in a world that now seemed full of shadows. At school, some classmates treated them like celebrities, asking endless questions about the hidden rooms and the diary. Others avoided them, whispering about ghosts and curses. The children felt isolated, their world turned upside down by a mystery they could not escape. The neighbors, too, were changed. Mrs. Miller, who had lived next door for years, confessed to Mrs. Johnson that she had heard whispers through the walls, but had always assumed it was just the wind. She wept as she remembered the nights she had lain awake, listening to the soft voices and footsteps, never daring to investigate. Other neighbors shared similar stories. Mr. Harris, the mailman, recalled seeing shadows in the windows, but had never thought to ask questions. Mrs. Lee, who lived across the street, remembered missing food from her pantry and toys from her yard, but had always blamed it on forgetfulness or the neighborhood children. The town was gripped by a sense of collective guilt. People who had once prided themselves on knowing everyone's business now wondered what else they might have missed. They questioned their own memories, their own choices, their own willingness to look the other way. The Johnsons' house became a place of pilgrimage. People came from miles around to see the hidden rooms, to walk through the spaces where the secret family had lived, to imagine what it must have been like to survive in the shadows. Some left flowers and notes at the door, expressing sympathy for both the Johnsons and the hidden family. Others came out of curiosity, snapping photographs and sharing stories with friends and family. The town's reckoning was not just about guilt and fear. It was also about fascination. The story of the hidden house became a legend, a warning, and a riddle. People debated the family's motives, their identity, and their fate. Some saw them as victims, forced into hiding by circumstances beyond their control. Others saw them as intruders, stealing food and privacy from the Johnsons. A few believed the house was cursed, haunted by the ghosts of those who had lived and died in its shadows. The Johnsons tried to move on, but the past followed them. The whispers in the walls were gone, but the memories remained. The children grew up with a sense of unease, always wondering if someone was watching. The hidden house became a symbol, a reminder that secrets can hide in plain sight, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes trap us instead. The town's reckoning was not just about the past, it was also about the future. People began to look at their own homes, their own families, their own lives with new eyes. They wondered what secrets might be hiding just out of sight, what stories might be waiting to be discovered. The Johnsons eventually decided to move, hoping for a fresh start in a new town. They packed their belongings, said goodbye to their neighbors, and left the house on Willow Lane behind. But the legend of the hidden house followed them, a story that would shape their lives for years to come. The house itself stood empty for months, its windows dark and its doors locked. But the legend grew. People came from all over to see the hidden rooms, to walk through the spaces where the secret family had lived, to imagine what it must have been like to survive in the shadows. The town's reckoning was not just about guilt and fear. It was also about hope. The story of the hidden house became a lesson, a reminder that even in the darkest places hope can survive. The diary found in the hidden room became a symbol of that hope, its pages filled with the words of a child who had lived in fear but never lost her dreams. The diary was published, inspiring books, films, and endless debate. Some saw it as a warning against isolation. Others saw it as a testament to the power of hope. The town's reckoning was not just about the past. It was also about the future. People began to look at their own homes, their own families, their own lives with new eyes. They wondered what secrets might be hiding just out of sight, what stories might be waiting to be discovered. As the chapter closes, the town of Willow Lane stands at the threshold of a new era. The legend of the hidden house has changed the community forever, leaving behind a legacy of curiosity, compassion, and the enduring power of secrets. Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you deeper into the diary's voice, the dreams, the longing, and the hope that survived even in the darkest corners of the hidden house. The diary's voice. The diary from the hidden room became more than just a piece of evidence. It became the soul of the mystery. Its pages, written in a child's careful hand, offered a window into a world that no one on Willow Lane had ever imagined. For the Johnsons, for the police, and for the entire town, the diary was both a comfort and a torment. It answered some questions, but it raised even more. The diary was first read in the quiet of the Johnsons' living room, with the family gathered close and the police listening in respectful silence. Mrs. Johnson's hands trembled as she turned the fragile pages. Tommy and Grace leaned in, their eyes wide, as the words of another child, one who had lived just feet away yet in a different world, came to life. "We are safe for now. Mama says we must be quiet. I miss the sun." The entries were simple, but each one was heavy with emotion. The child wrote about the routines of their hidden life, how they moved only at night, how they listened to the Johnsons' laughter through the walls, how they celebrated birthdays with whispered songs and shared crumbs of cake. There were moments of joy, games invented in the darkness, stories told by candlelight, the comfort of family even in the smallest of spaces. But there was also fear. The diary described the terror of every creak and footstep, the dread of being discovered, the longing for freedom. The child wrote about watching Tommy and Grace play in the yard, about wishing to join them, about the ache of being invisible. Tommy got a new bike today. I wish I could ride it. Mama says maybe someday. The diary's voice was hauntingly honest. It spoke of hope and despair, of dreams and disappointments. The child wrote about the changing seasons, about the cold that seeped through the walls in winter, about the heat that made the hidden rooms stifling in summer. She wrote about the small joys, a flower found in the garden, a song remembered from before, a moment of laughter shared with her brother. Sometimes I dream of running outside. I dream of sunlight and grass. But Mama says we must stay hidden. She says it's safer this way. The Johnsons read the diary together every night, their voices trembling as they recited the child's words. They tried to imagine what it must have been like to live in fear, to watch the world from behind a wall, to long for a life that seemed just out of reach. The diary became a lifeline for the family, a way to connect with the people who had shared their home for so many years. It was a comfort to know that the hidden family had found moments of happiness, even in the darkest of times. But it was also a torment, a reminder of the pain and isolation that had shaped their lives. The diary's final entry was especially haunting. I heard Tommy and Grace laughing today. I wish I could laugh with them. Maybe someday, someone will find us. Maybe someday, we will be free. The words lingered in the air, a reminder of the family's hope and despair. The diary was published, and soon it became a sensation. Scholars and psychologists analyzed every word, searching for clues to the family's identity and fate. Some saw the diary as a warning against isolation, a testament to the power of hope in the face of fear. Others saw it as a story of survival, a reminder that even in the darkest places, the human spirit can endure. The diary inspired books, films, and endless debate. It was read in classrooms, discussed in book clubs, and quoted in sermons. People from all over the world wrote letters to the Johnsons, sharing their own stories of loss, hope, and resilience. For the town of Willow Lane, the diary became a symbol of reckoning. It forced people to confront their own fears and failures, to question the stories they told themselves about safety and community. It reminded them that secrets can hide in plain sight, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes become our prisons. The diary also became a source of healing. The Johnsons found comfort in the words of the hidden child, in the knowledge that they were not alone in their struggles. They reached out to their neighbors, sharing their story and listening to others. The town came together, united by a shared sense of loss and a desire to move forward. The diary's voice echoed through the years, a reminder that every family has its secrets, every home its shadows. It taught the people of Willow Lane to look closer, to listen harder, and to never take the ordinary for granted. As the chapter closes, the diary's words linger in the minds of the Johnsons, the town, and everyone who hears the story. The mystery of the hidden house remains unsolved, but the diary's voice continues to speak, a testament to the power of hope, the pain of isolation, and the enduring strength of the human spirits. Stay with us because the next chapter will take you into the haunting of Willow Lane, the ghost stories, the legends, and the way the hidden house became a part of the town's identity. The haunting of Willow Lane. The years after the discovery of the secret family in the walls brought a strange new life to Willow Lane. The Johnsons had moved away, but their old house remained, a silent witness to everything that had happened, and a magnet for stories, rumors, and restless imaginations. The hidden house, as it came to be known, was no longer just a place on a map. It was a legend, a warning, and a question that no one could answer. At first, the house stood empty. The windows were boarded up, the doors locked, and the garden left to grow wild. But the story of the family in the walls was too powerful to be contained. People came from all over to see the house for themselves. Some were drawn by curiosity, others by fear, and a few by something deeper, a need to understand how such a secret could have been kept for so long. The children of Willow Lane were the first to turn the house into a legend. They dared each other to run up to the porch at night, to knock on the door, or to peek through the cracks in the boards. They told stories of ghostly faces in the windows, of whispers in the dark, of toys that moved on their own. Some claimed to have seen the shadow of a little girl in the upstairs window, her eyes sad and searching. As the years passed, the stories grew. Teenagers snuck into the house on dares, their flashlights flickering as they explored the hidden rooms. Some came out laughing, others pale and shaken. A few refused to talk about what they had seen, their silence only adding to the mystery. The adults in the town were not immune to the house's pull. Some avoided Willow Lane altogether, crossing the street rather than walk past the old house. Others became obsessed, collecting every article, every rumor, every scrap of information they could find. The local library kept a file labeled The Hidden House, filled with newspaper clippings, police reports, and letters from people who claimed to know the truth. The house became a place of pilgrimage for those who had lost something, a loved one, a sense of safety, a belief in the ordinary. People left flowers on the porch, notes tucked into the cracks in the door, and toys for the children who had once lived in the walls. Some came to pray, others to ask forgiveness, and a few just to stand in silence, listening for the whispers that had once haunted the Johnsons. The legend of the hidden house spread far beyond Willow Lane. It was featured in books, documentaries, and even a viral video called The Most Disturbing Secret Rooms Ever Discovered. The video blended real footage of the house with dramatic reenactments, bringing the story to millions of viewers around the world. Some saw the hidden family as victims, others as intruders. But everyone agreed that the story was unforgettable. For the families who still lived on Willow Lane, the house was a constant presence. Some tried to ignore it, focusing on their own lives and routines. Others found themselves drawn to it, unable to resist the pull of the mystery. Children grew up hearing the story from their parents, and then telling it to their own children, each generation adding new details, new fears, and new hopes. The Johnsons, now living in another town, struggled to move on. Mrs. Johnson found herself waking in the night, listening for whispers that were no longer there. Mr. Johnson tried to bury himself in work, but the memories of the house followed him everywhere. Tommy and Grace grew up with a sense of unease, always wondering if someone was watching, always questioning what was real and what was imagined. The diary from the hidden room became a family treasure, passed down from one generation to the next. It was read at family gatherings, its words a reminder of the hope and fear that had shaped their lives. The diary's final entry, "Maybe someday we will be free," became a kind of prayer, a wish for peace and understanding. The house itself changed over time. The boards on the windows rotted away, the garden grew wild, and the paint peeled from the walls. But the legend only grew stronger. Some said the house was haunted, that the spirits of the hidden family still lingered, searching for the life they had lost. Others believed the house was cursed, a place where secrets could never stay buried. A few brave souls tried to live in the house, but none stayed for long. The whispers returned, and the shadows grew deeper, and the sense of being watched became unbearable. Each new family left behind their own stories, their own fears, and their own unanswered questions. The town tried to move on, but the hidden house was always there, a reminder of the secrets that can hide in the most ordinary places. The story became a lesson, a warning, and a source of endless fascination. For some, the house was a place of healing. People came to leave their own secrets, their own burdens, hoping that the walls would absorb their pain. Others came to remember, to honor the family that had lived in the shadows, to promise that they would never let such a secret go unnoticed again. The legend of the hidden house became a part of Willow Lane's identity. It was a story that united the town, even as it divided opinions. It was a mystery that refused to be solved, a question that lingered in every conversation, every dream, every quiet moment. As the chapter closes, the house stands silent, its windows dark, its secrets intact. The whispers may have faded, but the story lives on, in the hearts of the families who lived there, in the minds of the children who grew up in its shadow, and in the imagination of everyone who hears the tale. Stay with us, because the next chapter will take you into the unanswered questions, the theories, the legends, and the search for closure that continues to this day. The unanswered questions. Decades passed, but the story of the hidden house never faded from Willow Lane, or from the minds of those who had lived through its mystery. The house itself changed hands many times, but no one ever stayed for long. Some families left after only a few months, unable to sleep through the night or shake the feeling that they were being watched. Others tried to renovate, only to find new hidden spaces, strange markings or objects that seemed to appear and disappear on their own. The legend grew with every retelling. Children who had once dared each other to knock on the door grew up and told their own children about the house where a family had lived in the walls. The story became a rite of passage, a test of courage, and a source of endless speculation. But for those who had been closest to the mystery, the Johnsons, their neighbors, and the police who had investigated, the questions never went away. Who was the secret family? Why had they chosen to hide? What had driven them to such desperate measures? And perhaps most haunting of all, what had become of them after the walls were torn down? Theories abounded. Some believed the family had been refugees fleeing war or persecution, and had found safety only in the shadows. Others thought they might have been running from the law, hiding from a crime that no one ever discovered. A few whispered that the family had never really left, that their spirits still lingered in the house, watching and waiting for someone to find them. The diary, with its simple, heartfelt entries, became the centerpiece of every theory. Scholars pored over its pages, searching for clues in the child's words. They analyzed the handwriting, the language, the references to places and people. Some claimed to have found hidden codes or secret messages, but none could say for certain who the family had been or why they had chosen such a life. The Johnsons, now older and living far from Willow Lane, were often asked about the house. Mrs. Johnson would sometimes take out the diary and read it aloud to her grandchildren, her voice trembling with emotion. She spoke of the guilt she still felt, the questions that haunted her dreams, and the hope that someday someone would find the answers. Tommy and Grace, now adults, carried the story with them wherever they went. Tommy became a writer, penning articles and essays about the hidden house, always searching for new leads, new perspectives, new ways to understand what had happened. Grace became a teacher, sharing the story with her students as a lesson in empathy, curiosity, and the importance of looking beyond the surface. The town of Willow Lane changed, but the hidden house remained a constant presence. New families moved in, drawn by the legend or simply by the charm of the old neighborhood. Some tried to ignore the house, while others embraced its mystery, hosting tours, writing books, and even making a small museum out of the hidden rooms. Theories continued to multiply. Some believed the family had escaped and started a new life elsewhere, their secret forever safe. Others thought they had perished in the walls, their bodies hidden in places no one had ever found. A few believed the house itself was alive, that it had absorbed the family's secrets and would never let them go. The story attracted the attention of paranormal investigators who set up cameras and sensors in the house, hoping to capture evidence of ghosts or supernatural activity. Some claimed to have recorded strange voices, cold spots, or unexplained movements. Their videos, including the viral "The Most Disturbing Secret Rooms Ever Discovered," brought the story to a new generation, sparking debates and drawing visitors from around the world. But for the people of Willow Lane, the mystery was more than just a story. It was a part of their lives, a shadow that touched every family, every home, every quiet night when the wind rattled the windows and the old house seemed to sigh. The unanswered questions became a kind of comfort, a reminder that not everything in life can be explained or understood. The story of the hidden house was a lesson in humility, in the limits of knowledge, and in the power of secrets to shape our lives. Some found peace in the mystery, choosing to believe that the family had found freedom, that their hope had not been in vain. Others were haunted by the thought that they had missed the chance to help, to reach out, to make a difference. The diary's final entry, "Maybe someday we will be free," became a kind of prayer for the town, a wish for closure, for understanding, for forgiveness. As the years went by, the hidden house became a symbol of resilience, of the human capacity to endure even in the darkest of circumstances. It was a story that united the town, even as it divided opinions. It was a mystery that refused to be solved, a question that lingered in every conversation, every dream, every quiet moment. The house itself stood as a silent witness, its walls holding secrets that no one would ever fully uncover. The garden grew wild, the paint peeled, and the windows stared out at the world with a kind of quiet sadness. But the story lived on, in the hearts of the families who had lived there, in the minds of the children who grew up in its shadow, and in the imagination of everyone who heard the tale. As the chapter closes, the unanswered questions remain. Who was the family in the walls? Why did they hide? What happened to them after the house was open to the world? And what secrets are still waiting to be discovered, hidden in the most ordinary places? Stay with us, because the final chapter will explore the legacy of the hidden house, the lessons learned, the stories told, and the way a single mystery can change a town forever. The legacy of the hidden house. The hidden house on Willow Lane became more than just a story. It became a part of the town's soul. Decades after the Johnsons moved away and the last police report was filed, the legend of the family in the walls continued to shape the lives of everyone who heard it. The house itself, battered by time and weather, stood as a silent witness to the secrets it had once held. Its windows, dark and empty, seemed to watch the world with a kind of quiet wisdom, as if it knew things no one else could ever understand. For the people of Willow Lane, the hidden house was a lesson in humility. It reminded them that no matter how well you think you know your neighbors, there are always stories you cannot see. The Johnsons, once just another family on the block, became a symbol of how easily the extraordinary can hide within the ordinary. Their experience taught the town to look closer, to listen harder, and to never take the comfort of routine for granted. The diary found in the hidden room became a cherished artifact, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. It was read aloud at family gatherings, in classrooms, and at town meetings. The child's words, simple, honest, and full of longing, became a kind of prayer for the community. "Maybe someday we will be free," she had written, and those words echoed in the hearts of everyone who heard them. The Hidden House inspired countless stories, books, and even films. Writers and filmmakers were drawn to the mystery, each trying to capture the fear, hope, and resilience that defined the family in the walls. Some focused on the horror of the secret, others on the courage it took to survive. But all agreed that the story was unforgettable, a reminder that the line between safety and danger, between home and prison, is thinner than we like to believe. The house itself changed over the years. Some tried to renovate it, hoping to erase the past and start fresh. But the walls seemed to resist change, as if they were determined to hold on to their secrets. New families moved in, but none stayed for long. The whispers returned, the shadows deepened, and the sense of being watched became too much to bear. Eventually, the house was left empty, its garden overgrown and its paint peeling. But the legend only grew stronger. People came from all over to see the hidden house, to walk through the rooms where the secret family had lived, to imagine what it must have been like to survive in the shadows. Some left flowers and notes at the door, others simply stood in silence, listening for the echoes of the past. The story of the hidden house became a part of the town's identity. It was a story that united the community, even as it divided opinions. Some saw the hidden family as victims, forced into hiding by circumstances beyond their control. Others saw them as intruders, their presence a violation of the Johnsons' privacy and trust. But all agreed that the story was a warning, a reminder that secrets can hide in plain sight, and that the walls we build to protect ourselves can sometimes become our prisons. For the Johnsons, the legacy of the hidden house was both a burden and a gift. They carried the story with them wherever they went, sharing it with their children and grandchildren. They spoke of the guilt they felt, the questions that haunted their dreams, and the hope that someday someone would find the answers. The diary became a family treasure, a symbol of resilience and the enduring power of hope. The town of Willow Lane changed, but the hidden house remained a constant presence. New generations grew up with the story, their lives shaped by the questions their parents and grandparents had left behind. The house became a symbol of resilience, of the human capacity to endure even in the darkest of circumstances. It was a story that united the town, even as it divided opinions. It was a mystery that refused to be solved, a question that lingered in every conversation, every dream, every quiet moment. The hidden house also became a place of healing. People came to leave their own secrets, their own burdens, hoping that the walls would absorb their pain. Others came to remember, to honor the family that had lived in the shadows, to promise that they would never let such a secret go unnoticed again. The story of the hidden house is a lesson about the power of secrets, the dangers of isolation, and the hope that can survive even in the darkest places. It teaches us to look closer, to listen harder, and to never take the ordinary for granted. It reminds us that every family has its secrets, every home its shadows, and that sometimes the most extraordinary stories are hidden in the most ordinary places. As the sun sets over Willow Lane, the hidden house stands silent, its windows dark, its secrets intact. The whispers may have faded, but the story lives on, in the hearts of the families who lived there, in the minds of the children who grew up in its shadow, and in the imagination of everyone who hears the tale. So what do you believe? Who was the family in the walls? Why did they hide? What happened to them after the house was open to the world? And what secrets are still waiting to be discovered, hidden in the most ordinary places? If this story left you with questions, or if you have your own theory about the hidden house, Let us know in the comments. For more mysteries and untold secrets, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sanctified Secrets. There are many more stories waiting to be uncovered, some even stranger than this one.